Most people, tend to overlook the ingenuity that allowed soldiers and civilians alike to endure the bitter Korean winters. The Korean War is often remembered for its back-and-forth offensives, mountainous campaigns, and, well, the geopolitical standoff it created between the United States, China, and the Soviet Union. Yet, one of the most overlooked aspects of the conflict was how men survived the freezing nights, particularly during the winter of 1950 to 1951, when temperatures often dropped below -20 degrees Celsius. Entire units were immobilized not by enemy fire, but by frostbite, illness, and exposure. What many historians fail to emphasize is the role of simple yet effective heating methods, borrowed in part from Northern European traditions, that kept soldiers alive in the field. Subscribe if you want a closer look at survival methods that shaped not just outcomes in Korea, but lessons for modern cold weather operations. Honestly, the challenge of heat in the Korean winter was far more immediate than combat itself. United Nations troops, primarily American and South Korean forces, were not prepared for the extremes of a Korean winter. Clothing was often insufficient, and supply lines struggled to deliver enough coal or fuel. In contrast, North Korean and Chinese forces, drawing on local resources and traditional techniques, improvised solutions to stay warm. One method in particular stood out: the silent, slow-burning hearth system, adapted in some rural villages and small military outposts. This was a low-smoke, fuel-efficient way to heat homes and shelters all night, without creating a fire hazard or alerting nearby units to their position. The hearth method relied on slow combustion rather than constant feeding. Unlike open fires that demanded constant attention and produced smoke visible for kilometers, these hearths burned wood or charcoal in a dense bed insulated with stone or clay. The principle was simple. Once ignited, the fire smoldered at a controlled rate, radiating heat slowly through the floor or walls over many hours. For military engineers or survival-minded soldiers, the advantage was clear: a heated shelter throughout the night, without risking detection or requiring constant maintenance. Observations from United Nations intelligence reports noted the effectiveness of these slow-burning hearths in villages near front lines, where enemy units, often failed to detect occupation due to the minimal smoke output. The design of these hearths reveals a remarkable understanding of thermal mass. The Koreans, and by extension some Chinese units familiar with northern hearth traditions, constructed firebeds from dense stones or clay bricks. These materials absorbed heat from the small fire during the initial burning phase and then slowly released it, keeping interior temperatures relatively stable even as outdoor conditions plummeted. Reports from field hospitals describe soldiers waking with relatively mild frostbite in huts that incorporated this system, compared to others where open fires were used or where blankets were the only protection. The principle, in modern terms, is essentially a primitive heat battery. Soldiers adapted local techniques to military necessity. United Nations forces initially overlooked these methods, but by observing local practices, some forward units experimented with similar slow-burning hearths using sand, clay, or even metal boxes packed with charcoal. Small trenches filled with compacted coal allowed heat to radiate upward into sleeping quarters. The tactic was not just about warmth, it was about conserving fuel, maintaining operational security, and reducing smoke signatures, which was honestly critical near contested positions. Winter campaigns like the Chosin Reservoir highlight how inadequate heating measures can, really magnify casualties. Properly applied, these hearth techniques mitigated some environmental risks and extended operational endurance. Beyond mere survival, this method influenced field engineering and bunker design. The silent hearth concept directly informed how engineers later approached cold weather encampments in Korea and even influenced doctrines in Arctic and mountain warfare. Heat retention, fuel efficiency, and minimizing visibility became design priorities. Modern cold-weather military shelters, whether in training manuals or forward operating bases, echo these principles: insulated firebeds, controlled combustion, and the strategic use of thermal mass for heat storage. In many ways, the Korean War provided an empirical laboratory for testing centuries-old domestic heating methods under combat conditions. There were social and psychological benefits as well. The slow-burning hearth not only warmed bodies but also, honestly, sustained morale. Soldiers and civilians spending long nights in makeshift shelters reported a sense of comfort and continuity, particularly in areas cut off from supply lines. Warmth in extreme conditions can stabilize mental acuity, prevent hypothermia, and reduce sleep disruption. The hearth allowed small units or families to maintain a semblance of routine, even when surrounded by uncertainty or ongoing combat. Historians often overlook these human factors, yet they directly influenced unit cohesion and the capacity to recover from stress on the front lines. The method had limitations, and misuse carried risk. Hearths required proper insulation and, a controlled burn rate. Improper construction could lead to incomplete combustion, producing dangerous levels of carbon monoxide. Early experiments by untrained units sometimes resulted in mild poisoning or just wasted fuel. Additionally, gathering sufficient wood or charcoal could expose units to enemy observation or ambush, particularly in deforested areas near supply lines. Yet these constraints were not insurmountable, and over time, field manuals incorporated lessons from Korean adaptations, emphasizing ventilation, insulated construction, and careful placement. Survival lessons extend beyond military applications. From a broader perspective, these hearth systems highlight enduring principles of human resilience. Slow, controlled resource use, combined with environmental adaptation, can significantly enhance survival in harsh conditions. Modern survivalists can learn from this approach. Low-profile heating, thermal mass utilization, and minimizing energy waste are as relevant today for remote camping or disaster preparedness as they were for soldiers on the Korean peninsula. The silent hearth offers a case study in ingenuity under constraints, a reminder that, honestly, innovation often emerges from necessity. The long-term impact of these adaptations is subtle but significant. The Korean winter campaigns informed subsequent United Nations cold weather training and post-war civilian rebuilding programs. In some rural areas, hearth designs persisted for decades, influencing post-war architecture in northern Korea and northern China. Military engineering units later codified similar practices into cold weather training manuals, emphasizing sustainability, safety, and operational security. This link between traditional domestic knowledge and modern military application is, well, a great example of how historical practices can inform future doctrine without dramatic reinvention. Reflecting on overlooked histories really changes how we understand the war. While most public narratives focus on battles and high-level strategy, these small-scale survival adaptations reveal the intersection of environment, culture, and human ingenuity. The silent hearth, illustrates that warfare is not only about weapons or maneuvers, but also about endurance, adaptation, and learning from local knowledge. Understanding these subtler aspects of conflict provides richer context and can inform both historical analysis and practical survival thinking. Remembering these stories matters because, honestly, history is more than victory or defeat. The silent hearth may never appear in grand strategy textbooks, yet its influence on survival, engineering, and daily endurance was truly profound. By examining these practices, historians and survival-minded audiences alike can appreciate how environmental pressures shape human behavior and innovation. The lessons from Korea's harsh winters continue to resonate for anyone concerned with cold weather operations, sustainable field engineering, or, the practical realities of enduring extreme conditions. If you value nuanced historical analysis and insights into the lived experience of war, subscribe to History Vault. Share this video with others who seek depth over headlines, because understanding these overlooked strategies enriches both our appreciation of history and our preparedness for the challenges it can teach us to face.